My name is Benito Lucio. I am retired from the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services, and for 30 years I represented the migrant and seasonal farm worker population here in the state of Ohio. One of the tough issues that I dealt with was the issue of human trafficking and the difficulty in getting folks to go for help. And I'm very pleased to introduce to you Erin Meyer from the Salvation Army here in Columbus, who has a statewide effort to address human trafficking. And I encourage you to really pay close attention to these individuals that have dedicated their careers to work to combat this serious issue that we have in our community, which is human trafficking. Erin, welcome. Tell us about human trafficking and the Salvation Army and all your efforts that you've been doing for quite a few years now.
Well, so human trafficking is sometimes described as modern-day slavery. It's the exploitation of men, women, and children through either commercial sex or forced labor. So we see that in the state of Ohio and in other states in the United States. In networks such as restaurants, when people are forced to work or are not getting paid, or otherwise threats are being made. We see it in domestic servants, housekeepers, nannies. We see it in brothels, in commercial sex, in massage parlors, on the street, and in hotels, also online. So when we are thinking about human trafficking, really it can be infiltrating so many elements of our daily life. But we might not see human trafficking in every single restaurant, obviously, but when we are seeing individuals who are fearful of leaving, this culture of fear is created. So whether that's because they're being threatened, that if they report the situation to the police that they will get deported, or that their family will be harmed, or that they will be reported to Child Protective Services, which we often get for fear that their children will get taken away. And so really, when we're looking at these trafficking situations, those that are being exploited and being victimized through these different networks are fearful of leaving because there's some sort of retribution or physical harm that's either been already inflicted on them, or they've seen inflicted on others, or otherwise it's been threatened. So in terms of the services available, obviously this is an important issue to the state, and there's many organizations that are working to combat it. The Salvation Army is just one. I know there's other organizations that you'll hear from today. In addition to the Attorney General's office has statewide efforts, the Governor's office has statewide efforts, and there's a lot of government and independent agencies that are working throughout the state to combat this issue. A lot of what that means is providing education. So the Salvation Army is one of those agencies that provides education, as do many others throughout the community. Because if we don't know what to look for as a community, we don't know how to report it, and we don't know how to get people help. So many of the individuals that are being exploited have such a limited access to people outside of their trafficking network. And so really it requires community members, church parishioners, people visiting the restaurant, people getting their nails done at a nail salon. It really requires those people knowing what those signs are to report the case, so that law enforcement can investigate and service providers can be called to provide the support services that victims need to move through recovery. And some of those services include basic needs like shelter and food and clothes, but then also other longer term needs like immigration remedies. There's different visas that are available, in addition to mental health services are obviously a big need, and just general life skills training. For those that were exploited when they first were exploited as children, many have not had the opportunity to learn some of the basic independent skills that we take for granted as we're growing up. And so having the opportunity to kind of walk them through some of those skill building like budgets and other decision-making skills is really imperative.
You mentioned the fear factor. From your experience of working with folks that were in that situation, what's been your approach in helping those individuals overcome that fear? Because I know that from my personal experience in my 30 years, that was always, came into play, and it was one of the most challenging aspects of it, of getting those individuals to have that trust in us, because you in a situation like that, they're getting out of this situation. And, that trust to begin with is kind of, very iffy. So how do you encourage an individual to have that trust in you?
Well, you mentioned trust, and trust is really the big piece. And similar studies suggest that similar to domestic violence, it may take multiple engagements with someone outside of the network or the situation for someone to feel comfortable leaving or getting help. And so it may not be that first engagement that's where that client feels or that victim feels safe enough to leave. It may be that it's the 10th engagement, or it may be that it's the 10th person they talk to. It may not be even the same person, but it's about letting that individual know that you're there to support them, and putting an emphasis that it's not a conditional relationship. So many of these individuals, it's this relationship that's based on, if you do this for me, I will do this for you, or if you behave well, you won't get harmed. Behave well, meaning something that the trafficker deems is the appropriate behavior. So with making the relationship feel as if it's not conditional, so just being there to support them, whether or not they choose to leave at that time, or whether they're still making decisions for themselves and just choosing which are the best options for them. That really shows that you're there to support them, and you're there to support their decisions, not other people's decisions, and you trust that they can make that. So it's a little bit of sharing that trust, giving trust to let them feel that they can trust you as well. And I also think that it's really important, particularly when you're working with foreign national populations, to be as culturally competent as you can. So if you can be working with other populations that are familiar with working with certain cultures or certain people of certain backgrounds, that really can be helpful to help build that trust as well. So for that person to feel like they're safe because it's a familiar language, it's a familiar experience, and they can feel more safe in sharing their situation.
I know that many times, you mentioned too about individuals, the difficulty in getting out, and many times it's an individual that has very low self-esteem. And how do you approach that part of it in working to get their self-esteem? And the interesting thing is that self-esteem issues is relative to almost every individual. So sometimes when my personal experience was to always say to the individual, look, this is not just something unique to you, because sometimes that can be the reason why they feel bad about it. And I always say, look, at one point in my life I had very low self-esteem, so it's not something that you should feel down about it. Get help. And you mentioned a lot about the services to help an individual pick themselves up, learn a skill, or turn a new leaf and start a new life, a new career, and all that's possible. But self-esteem, what is your approach in the agency that you work with in helping those individuals have a more positive self-esteem?
Well, I think you were right in mentioning that approaching it from a non-judgmental standpoint. So reminding the client that they're not alone, that they're not being judged in the room, that they're being supported, but then also helping to motivate them to find their own strengths. Everybody, as you said, we all have our strengths.
Right.
A lot of those that are being victimized have shifted some of their behaviors for the need for survival. And so strengths that or reactions or behavior patterns that may be in the 9 to 5 situation looks a little bit maybe not are not considered appropriate ways to react to things in a survival situation are the appropriate ways to react to things, and could be considered leadership and reading people well and things of that nature. So all of those that are being victimized have strengths, and reminding them of their strength in surviving this extremely exploitative situation, the inner strength they found to survive I think can be really helpful. And helping them to identify their own confidence in making decisions to leave the situation and have confidence in their decision makings and their ability to recover and live independently on their own.
For you that's watching this, if you know anybody that's subjected to this, please feel free to contact the folks, the different organizations that are out there to provide services. To me, one of the most rewarding experience was to be able to help a couple of individuals get out of that situation. And they're now successful people in their lives, but it just took that friend that said to them, look, there is help, and there is this organization or there is this individual. Utilize whatever means that you can to get them to come to the agencies that will provide the assistance to get them on the right path. It's crucial. This issue is not something that that one organization is going to address it. No, it's a partnership. It's people like yourself that are just like myself and everybody else that are good, decent human beings that do not like to see people exploited. Given that we're one of the greatest countries in the world, we should never in this country allow that type of situation to exist here in the United States. Any other thing that you would like to add to those individuals that are maybe watching us on Facebook or whatever social media might be out there, to tell that young lady or that young man and saying, we're here to help you?
I think that's the best message, that it never hurts to call and report. If you're not sure if it's trafficking or not, it doesn't matter. You can call the hotline 24 hours a day. Teleinterpreters are available. You can text. You can report anonymously. It never hurts to get more information. You might be that one person that noticed something that gets that person the support that they need. So it never hurts to call. It's always the best to call. We need people to recognize the signs and to call.
Thank you, Erin.
Thank you.
Remember, folks, see something, say something. Human trafficking is real, and Salvation Army and some of the other agencies that we're going to be interviewing, and we're going to be sharing this information on different social media. Please help us combat human trafficking here in the state of Ohio. Thank you. Thank you.